Let me introduce Professor Nakamura from the University of Tokyo. He is really one of the leading experts in modeling, physical modeling of bodies. He'll talk about that in a moment. He received his PhD from Kyoto University in 1985, and then he was everywhere. He was in Santa Barbara. He had some sabbaticals, and then he went on to become a professor at the Department of Mechano-Informatics at the University of Tokyo, which is a very unique thing. I would not be aware of any other department in Mechano-Informatics. But University of Tokyo has been very successful in setting this up and running this, and of course also has been able to support the professors in very, very interesting areas. We have some of the professors here. Today it's Professor Nakamura, and he will report on supercomputing in the loop of biomechanics and neuroscience. So please let us welcome Professor Nakamura from Tokyo.
Thank you. I have some trouble to...
Well, it worked before.
Yeah.
And you have 1,000 witnesses, unfortunately.
Okay, now...
Don't do it now, do it later.
All right. Thank you very much, Alois, and thank you for gathering at in the afternoon of the third day of IOS. And I hope you are relaxed already and allow me to talk about one of our exciting but ongoing and the incomplete work. So I hope this is the opportunity to start a good discussion about the new challenge in robotics or further work to go. The title of my talk is big, but the content is, as I said, it's incomplete and ongoing. Well, first of all, I have to express my thanks to all the colleagues that contributed to this particular work. They spend a lot of time and days for this work. And next, I also have to thank to the funding resource. The MEX provided us this opportunity, and I'm a member of the Professor Takagi's team of this project. The project is very simple. Japan has the supercomputer. This used to be the #1 supercomputer of the world, but it's now probably 4th or 5th. And the Ministry of Education is helping and emphasizing to develop scientific use of this resource. So we are one of the many groups developing the particular application using this supercomputer. Well, our goal is to simulate the life of postdoc. I'm just kidding. Simulate the Parkinson's disease. This is our goal. And Parkinson's disease is well known that about 1% of people over age 60 is having the risk of Parkinson's disease. And these are the pictures and the photo from the very early books around 130 years ago. But already in the Egyptian papyrus or even in the Bible, the Parkinson's disease was mentioned. So it's a very long historical disease for human beings. Well, of course, this is a disease of the brain, and the symptoms are explained in many ways, but there are several particular symptoms like tremor or slow movement, which is known as bradykinesia, and rigid muscles, and the impaired posture and balance. These are the typical the symptoms. And the progression is explained. The symptoms start from the problem of the stem of the brain, and then going to the basal ganglia, and then spread all over the cortex. So that means that the first symptom, based on this paper, said that it started from olfactory problem and then developed little by little. And of course, because this spread all over the cortex, the symptom is very complex in that sense. And this is the typical explanation, and this is a basal ganglia. And the problem is that in the what is named subcutaneous nigula, that is around here, there is the cells, neurons, that create dopamine. And that cell may create what is known as Levy body. This includes some particular proteins. Then there is a problem. There will be a problem. And the dopamine, if dopamine is not created, this brain circuit has a problem. Actually, this magenta line from SNC, this is subcutaneous nigula reticulata. From here to striatum, this is the dopamine path. This path will not work if Parkinson's disease starts. So that causes, of course, there are many problems due to the network and feedback systems. And this is the particular pathway of the Parkinson's disease. I mean, there are many other explanations and pathways, but this is typical pathways. And our team has different expertise. The Professor Takagi, he's a PI. He is the expert of the computational mechanics, and his group simulate the molecular level of muscle activities and finite element modeling. And the Professor Doyle of Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology is not well known, the neuroscientist. And his group, before this work, already tested the computer simulation of the neural system that has as many neurons as the mouse brain. And we are in this group, and our expertise is, of course, robotics, and we have algorithm and software for simulating complex systems, in particular the human musculo-skeletal system. And in our group, we have the expert of the Parkinson's disease. He's from Osaka University. So we have connected already existing software environment. For example, NEST is developed by the next speaker in this session, the Mark Oliver Gebanzig developed this software, and we are happy to use it. And music is a software connecting C or C++ with NEST. And the finite element software is developed in Fortran, and we rewrote this algorithm and connected. Connected. So in total, we have the finite element muscle modeling and the complex musculoskeletal network and the software for modeling neurons. And we have been working on making the model of neuromusculoskeletal system, including the basal ganglia and some small portion of cortex. Actually, the people in Okinawa has been working on this brain part, and we have been working on the spine and the musculoskeletal systems. Okay, so there are a few components we developed. This is quite robotics. And I just want to explain how the robotics can contribute to these kind of computations. Well, many years ago, the Professor Yamane, he is now in Disney, developed the very efficient algorithms of dynamics. And the Professor Takagi's group developed the efficient FEM simulation in Fortran. And now we are combining them and computing the musculoskeletal network. And we have about 1,000 muscles, and each muscle is computed by finite element algorithms, and the skeletal system is computed as rigid body systems. So all of these are explained by, of course, the equation of motion. This is the muscle FEM motion equation, and we have boundary condition like the attached point of the muscles and the joint constraint. So all of these dynamic equation plus constraint equation are linearized and solved by solving the large-scale linear equations. This is how we approach this problem. Okay, so since the system is complex, I just want to go through very roughly. Okay, so we have 1,000 muscles, and each muscle has FEM model. That takes a lot of time. So muscles are computed in parallel. We have 1,000 muscles computed in parallel. And this is the rigid body part. The skeletal system is rigid body. And the muscle motion of equation and rigid body equation and constraint are all included. So the muscles are computed in parallel and then solved one by one and then gathered to the skeletal system, that is the rigid body system. And we solve the rigid body motion, and then the result will be fed back to each muscles. So this is how we solve the large system in parallel using the supercomputer power. And this is some simulation result, and we can compute hybrid system of many finite element bodies plus rigid body skeletal systems. This is quite challenging part. Actually, the computational stability is still the problem. We have to be very careful tuning the parameters. Okay. So the headache is the contact and collisions. So we have many muscles and bones, right? So they are colliding each other. And we have to compute the point of collision and interaction force between the contact point. There are many of them. So this is a challenging part. So we have developed this kind of hierarchical algorithms. First, we check if the big box, including muscle, is colliding with another muscles. And if they are colliding, then we check the small ones, one after another. So in this way, starting from big rectangle, we can go to the detailed polygon of the muscles. And then we can go up to the top. So in this way, we compute the collision and contact force, and then simulate the whole systems. So these are the highly parallel geometric algorithms that is quite common in robotics. This is a nice contribution of robotics to simulate a complex system like human musculoskeletal system. So this is trivial. Does it move? Yeah, very trivial simulation result. Of course, it can be done. And since they are highly parallel, the efficiency is high. Okay, now we developed the whole body finite element musculoskeletal system. And the problem we have a lot of problems, but the particular problem we had is that nobody knows the natural shape of the muscle, right? We can find some anatomical pictures, but those muscles are already pre-tensioned. We don't know free muscle shape. It is a very hard problem. So we then decided not to consider the shape of muscle too much. So assuming very symmetric shape like German sausage, we studied. So we computed the collision and contact force. So our German sausage collide each other and made this kind of network at the end. Of course, if we carefully design the shape, we can come to much better non-ugly musculoskeletal system. But this is the finite element model that has a mass and the dense of the system. Well, next we worked on the neural networks, of course. Modeling neuron is a critical part. And we are learning from the literature and try to gather the knowledge as much as possible and try to extrapolate for those missing. And this is a work of Manish Srinivasa. He is now in the University of Heidelberg, and he worked with us for 2 years and developed this work. And his paper has just accepted to the IEEE transaction on neural systems and rehabilitation engineering. And this model is quite simple. We have only 1 degree of freedom system of elbow joint. And the elbow joint is controlled by bicep and tricep. So 2 muscles and 3 muscles. And each muscle, bicep or tricep, typically has nearly 700 motor neurons, or maybe 200 or 300 muscle spindle sensory neurons. And they are modeled. And this blue line is showing the sensory signal from the bicep. And this is the sensory neurons. And then the sensory signal is going to motor neuron of bicep and coming back. This is the stretch reflex to the self muscles. And the same sensory signals goes to the interneurons and then go to the tricep. And this path inhibit the activation of tricep. Of course, the activation of tricep goes to the sensory neuron and coming back to the tricep, to the self muscles. And in this pathway, we are just looking at the inhibition from bicep to tricep, but not tricep to bicep, just for simplicity. So naturally, we should have one. So this is the sensory neuron, interneuron, and motor neuron pools. So the motor neuron pools are inside the spine, and the sensory neuron pools is just near the spine, but outside. And their number is quite well known in the literature, but of course, distribution is not known. So we have just randomly distributed them in the space. Well, there are some well-known mathematical assumption that the one motor neuron controls one motor unit. One motor unit means one bundle of the muscle fibers. And large motor unit controls large bundle of muscle fibers. And smaller, the neurons control the small ones. And actually, smaller one activate very fast, and larger one is being activated very slow. So they have this scale phenomena. This is very important. And the activity of neuron is modeled in several ways. But we just picked up the quite simple but reasonable leaky integral amplifier model. This is just leaky capacitance, and it's just gather the current coming to the neurons. And if the voltage comes to some threshold, it sparks and fire. This is how it works. And the size of motor neurons has some rule of thumb. So we picked up the rule, and based on the size, the capacitance, membrane capacitance is determined, and the time constant is determined. So in this way, we try to minimize the number of the constant, unknown constant. And of course, the synaptic connection is a main important part, of course. But again, in order to minimize the parameters, we just used and assumed the Gaussian distribution. I mean, if the two neurons are close, their connectivity is high, and two neurons are very apart, the connectivity is low. And this connection is represented by this Gaussian type distributions. Well, this is very interesting part, and I like this part. This is the firing input U. This is 1 or 0. If neuron fires, the neuron provide 1 to the next neuron. If it doesn't fire, it's 0. And this is a discrete type of second order integration. And by integrating the neural activities, the A is determined. And this A is the muscle activities. And muscle activities are typically approximated by EMG signals. So this way, the firing neuron, spiking neuron is gathered and integrated and making the muscle activities. And very interestingly, we are looking at one type of sensors. There are two types of sensors, Golgi tendon sensory organ, that they are inside the tendon. But we are not considering in this model. We are only looking at the muscle spindle. They are scattered inside the muscles. And muscle spindles firing frequency is determined by these equations. B is the speed of muscles contraction. L is a length. And this is background frequency. So the muscle spindle has firing by these frequencies. So to me, this is something like A to D or D to A converter. So the digital signal, like the spiking neuron signal, is integrated and becomes continuous muscle activities. And the continuous velocity or length is going to be transformed into the frequency. So this is digital analog or frequency transformation in a sense. But we realize that this is very important part. In the case of Parkinson's disease, as I already explained, the tremor is a vibration. So vibration is not A to D type of thing. Its frequency appears in the continuous way, right? So modeling the neuron's activity by this spiking neurons, we can approach the problem of vibrations. This is very important part. Well, some constant of motor neurons are also modeled by these logarithmic functions. This is also from the literature. So we are trying to learn these kind of knowledge. Maybe many of you already know, but it is very exciting to gather some of them. I mean, we are trying to get all of them, but it's very hard. Well, this is the well-known hill-type muscle model. Actually, this model is applied to each motor unit. And the whole, the muscle force is the just simple mathematical sum of this force. And muscle force is linear to the muscle activities that is computed in the previous slide. And FL and FB are some simple nonlinear function of length and velocity. And Fmax is just a constant. FB is very simple Gaussian type function. And FB is, again, simple sigmoid-like function. Well, the Manish made this model, and using the nest, all the neurons and sensory neurons, motor neurons are modeled. And he did two different type of experiment for five subjects, and took the data, and for the third experiment was used for verification. The experiment was simple. The experiment was bending the elbow angle 90 degrees and pulling down the wrist by the weight. And of course, bicep has contractions. And the second experiment was that there is no load, but the co-contraction is requested to the subject. And then blindly, some object was thrown from the top of the hand. And there is some collision and vibration afterwards. So gathering those signals, we can simulate the muscle activities based on our software, and then identify by optimization some parameters that we have already defined. Well, this is the verification result. It's hard to explain and nothing too interesting, but the all right. So this is a normal case, and this is a case with 150% of gains, feedback gains. So this is the extreme case, but this is easier to explain. So at this time, I think t equal to 0.2 second, the ball is dropped to the hand. Then this is the muscle spindle of the tricep, and this is the bicep motor neurons. And this is the motor neurons of the, this is the sensory neurons of bicep. And first bicep is activated, and bicep motor neurons are making this signal. I mean, sensory neurons are making this signal. And the tricep is also activated. And this is the sensory signal from the tricep. And then by this sensory neurons of the bicep, interneuron is activated, and then interneuron inhibit the activity of tricep. In this way, the loop is working, and there are some sensitive vibration, because this is too high gain. This case has too high gain. Okay, so I have 5 minutes or 10 minutes? Okay. Well, this is a quite new work of the Kazunari Takeichi. He graduated the master course this spring. And he did very extensive work on the modeling. Well, Manish Srinivasa developed the detailed neural network of bicep and tricep. So we wanted to extend this idea to the whole body. This is a huge work. But we made best effort to get that all the kind of available knowledge, but we found that only 14 muscles are known about the number of motor neurons and number of muscle spindles. And we have 1,000 muscles. So there is no literature knowledge. It was a very difficult problem. But we made this kind of drawing. The horizontal line is the number of motor neuron over mass. This is showing how many motor neuron per mass or kilogram. And vertical axis, vertical axis is number of muscle spindle, the sensory neurons of the muscle, over total neurons, means motor neuron plus muscle spindles. That means the ratio of sensors among neurons. The horizontal line is number of motor neuron per mass. And we put the known 14 muscles in this drawing. Then there are some interesting features we can see. For example, knee or arm, they have larger rate of the number of muscle spindle. They use more sensors. They use sensory resource. But the number of motor neuron per mass is very small. Head or maybe foot, hand, they have fairly large ratio about the number of motor neuron per mass. So if we look at the function or portion of the body, we can roughly estimate the property of the muscles. So in this way, we put all 1,000 muscles in this drawing and try to roughly estimate the number of muscles. We know the mass of the muscles, right? So this is the very rough estimate, but we did. And the distribution of neurons are reported in the literature, of course, but it's not really mathematical. And the Takeichi-kun, he spent a lot of time, and he distributed all the motor neurons and muscle spindle neurons at the spines for whole body. For example, this is the neurons of L3. And in total, we have 128,000 motor neurons and 53,000 muscle spindles of the body. We don't have interneurons, unfortunately, yet. We have to include. So we made a very simple self-reflex model, not inhibition type reflex model. And of course, we can simulate, and this is very simple simulation. We just pushed the lower leg, and we observed how the sensation of muscles are spread over the spines and coming back to the muscles. So this is, of course, the synapse connection is very simply made by ad hoc way. So it is not really quantitative. So these are the firing of muscle spindle and motor neurons, and this is a patellar tendon reflex. But in our case, our simulation is pushing the lower leg, not hitting the tendon. So the phenomenon is slightly different. This is a simulated result. Anyway, the complex modeling is being developed. Of course, we have a lot to do further, and we have many unknowns, and we have to develop the learning system or training system to tune the parameters. And just about 1 month ago, another master student, Rohan has just finished his master dissertation, and he did very interesting work. And one of the major symptoms is impaired posture and walking. So we are interested in attacking this problem. So this paper was suggested by Professor Taishin Nomura sensei in Osaka University, and this is a movement of the COP of healthy people, but this is showing very typical difference between the healthy person and typical COP or COM of the Parkinson's patient. Do you know which is closer to Parkinson's patient? Actually, this is closer to the control of COP of the Parkinson's patient. So the healthy person has widespread COM or COP while just standing still. But Parkinson's patient has more stiff control of the COP or COM. So these are the difference. But this data is from the healthy persons. So of course, the symptoms depend on the person, and its variety is very large. So we want to model this kind of the posture control system. So in order to model this, the muscle spindle is not the sufficient sensory signal. And Rohan spent a lot of time, and he modeled the vestibular sensors. So in the vestibular sensors, there are 36,000 sensory neurons, and they are just gathered here. And their mathematical model is given in the literature. So using the NEST, he programmed 36,000 sensory neurons here. And this is interesting part. This is the Cutaneous sensors on the foot skin. So these locations are quite well defined and known. And again, Rohan spent some time and put all the Cutaneous sensations on the skin of the foot. So now we have the force sensor on the foot, and we have IMU in the vestibular system, right? So we want to use this neural signal to stabilize the whole body. So of course we don't know how to combine with the brain system that has a problem of the dopamine receptors. So the current question that our brain team in Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology are looking at literature and trying to simulate the particular vibration or oscillatory signal of the brain. And it seems that the tremor is around 4 to 5 hertz. And in the case of tremor, brain also has oscillation of 4 or 5 or 6 hertz. This is one particular knowledge in the literature. And furthermore, for other symptoms of Parkinson's disease, what is known as beta band, that is, as far as I understand, from 13 hertz to 30 hertz, vibration is in the straight term in the brain. So the question is how those signals are coming to the muscles and how the symptoms is created with the body. And of course, the vestibular sensation or the foot force, contact force sensation, they must be combined. And I'm just curious how we can develop those feedback systems perturbed by the vibrations. Well, this is the force sensing. Well, this is incomplete work, so I have no good conclusion, but just summarize a few things. Building the physiologically detailed model of muscles, skeletons, sensory motor neurons, sensory organs. And this is very exciting part. We have to learn a lot from the literature, but the computational tool and robotics theories can help us. And of course, the knowledge in the literature is not enough. We have to estimate and extrapolate based on mathematical intuitions. And of course, the parallel algorithm of geometry dynamics optimization in robotics play a very important role. This is a very strong tool for these complex systems. And our scientific challenge of robotics to me is to search for the pathways from mathematical modeling, and simulation of the Parkinson's disease symptom is a real challenge. Of course, this is the future thought, but of course not conclusive. The future study in depth of cognitive skill, such as motion control and planning, the Parkinson's disease, since it's spread to the cortex, it has a problem of the cognitive skills. So the question is how to model those. Of course, it's very difficult. I don't think we can solve very easily. But only way to approach this problem is to use the knowledge of control system design in robotics and cognitive modeling developed in robotics. I think we have some interesting tools to approach these exciting problems in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have time for 2 or 3 questions, and we also have an innovation. In the last plenary we have a wireless microphone, so you do not necessarily have to step up to the microphone, but if you want to, then of course there's probably a better quality. There's a question at microphone 3, please. Yes, please, go ahead.
So I had a question. I'm a bit curious about your visions for accessibility for this software. So do you think in the future that any neuroscientist can have like a high-level motor control hypothesis and use your tool, or will you have to be a specialized PhD student in your lab?
Well, the project has not decided yet, but as far as our software, we have already having the collaboration with other universities. So it's not freely open, but if you are interested in that, I'm happy to collaborate. And but we don't have manuals, so documentation is a problem. But if that is okay, we are happy to collaborate with any researchers.
Follow-up question would of course be how tied is your software to the K computer? Because if I don't have access to the K computer, your software will probably not be very useful. So the question is, are you planning to offer any services that I can access as a scientist?
Well, unfortunately or fortunately, our software is not still tuned to K computer. It's MPI, so it can be used for cloud computing, or of course to best use of K computer, it must be tuned to K computer. That is the next step. So at this moment, one can use in any cloud computing system.
But I mean, you mentioned the MPI, and of course, then the question is, what is the bandwidth, for example, that you need, and how optimized are your algorithms at this point, and how far are you hoping to optimize them further? Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on that as well?
Well, of course, to get the best performance, we have to tune to the specific the architecture of the computer. That is not done yet. So, of course, it is one possibility that we tune the system for the best performance of particular supercomputing system. But for wide use of the community, I think general design is another choice. So I think there are two possibilities.
Okay, so I see no further question. There's one. Yeah, maybe you can now use the microphone at least once. We paid a lot of big bucks for this microphone, so please use it now at least once in the final plenary. Yeah.
Thank you. It seems to work.
Yeah, excellent. Well, it should work. We're in Hamburg.
Your simulation is, of course, amazingly precise. But nevertheless, you have to invest assumptions like normal distribution or the German sausage assumption. How accurate do you think will you be able to simulate the humanoid body?
Human body.
The human body.
Okay. So it's hard. It's hard because we cannot verify. So we are always proposing proposals, but always rejected. That I have the good collaborator in Riken Bioresource Center. They have engineered mice, has particular genetic systems, and they can repeat the small animal experiment. So we are even developing the musculo-skeletal system of mouse. So by using this small animal, we can experimentally verify. And we may be able to bring that knowledge to the human model. So that is our scenario of the proposal, but it's not convincing yet. I hope you are convinced.
Well, I saw some videos from it. I was more convinced, obviously, than you are. But okay. Anyway, let me thank you again.